Hey folks, last time we spoke about the Trillion Dollar Club, and this time we're going to talk about one of those companies that's in the Trillion Dollar Club, Google, or how it's currently known, Alphabet. If you're wondering what is this Google Alphabet thing, it's pretty simple. Alphabet is the holding company. That means that it owns Google. And there are a couple of other companies they've spun off from Google that they also own. But the bulk of Alphabet is actually Google as you know it, which is search engines, advertising, etc. And so we'll be using the term interchangeably. What's interesting is while the traded company is Alphabet, the ticker on the exchange is actually GOOG, which means that it just shows you how important Google is to the overall value of Alphabet. Hey folks, I'm Subho and you're watching The Big Buck Show. It's a show where we tell you how you can start your investment journey and more importantly, how you can turn your small bucks into big bucks. So before we get into, when should I buy Alphabet, what's the value drivers, let's just talk about what they do, right? And I'll give you some pretty interesting facts. One, there are about 6 billion searches that happen daily. Let me repeat, 6 billion. That means imagine India. If every person in India searched roughly 5 times a day, that's the number of searches that happen on the Google Alphabet platform. Additionally, I think today Google accounts for the majority of online advertising. If you're advertising online, it's almost impossible to do that without Google. And given that our lives are increasingly online, that's a pretty impressive, share of market. Now that's about now. Let's talk about how it started. And here are two very interesting facts. The founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, actually met accidentally. So when we talk about, serendipity and luck, these were two people who met by chance and then went on to form a company that's worth trillions today. And the other interesting fact is you often hear about the myth of, these startups start in garages and that's where innovation happens. Their first rented office was actually a garage. But that was because they couldn't afford anything else, right? So they literally found the cheapest space they could have, which happened to be a garage. So some interesting facts. Let's talk about how you understand the company. Firstly, what should you be looking for? Let's start with something simple, revenue. Revenue is how much a company makes by selling its services or goods. What is Google's revenue? Well, it's over $250 billion a year today. That's expected to become close to $300 billion a year next year. Yes, I mean, this is very large numbers. And that's because, like I said, the bulk of this is advertising revenue. And they are the preeminent advertising service providers for everyone in the world. When you search on Google, what you'll often see is at the top of the page, a paid advertising link. And often because it's very relevant to what you want. So let's say I say, hey, look, let me search for pizza. And the first link that you'll see will be a link that talks about, hey, Domino's Pizza or some other pizza. And when you click on that, that company is paying Google money, right? When you see these nice little pictures, when you search and you click on a picture that seems to be relevant, someone's paying Google money. And of course, YouTube, which we're all crazy about, is owned by Google. And whenever you click on an ad or you see 3 seconds of an ad on YouTube, someone's paying Google money. So while Google is talked about as a tech company, and of course it is, fundamentally, it's become the de facto advertising engine for the world. What used to happen on Times of India, and today Times of India still, has ads, all of that, today happens globally through Google. That's what's making the company the money. There are some other pretty interesting pieces of the company, right? One, they have a cloud service that's competing with Amazon and Microsoft. If you're wondering what is a cloud service, I'm not talking about Rain. This is basically moving your computing. So if you have a laptop or a PC, what companies use is computing power that is owned by someone else, right? This is the idea that you don't need your own, offices full of hard drives and processors, but someone else owns that and rents it to you, which is basically a cloud service. And that is a business that's exploding, and Google has a clear presence there. That's an interesting part of the portfolio. That's a separate company within Alphabet, about 10% of their portfolio. And there's a fair amount of interesting innovation that they continue to invest in, what they call moonshots. So, other than their massive advertising business and Google Cloud, they have some pretty interesting portfolio companies within Alphabet. For example, they have an investment in rolling out fiber-based internet across multiple countries. They have an investment or multiple investments in AI, which is increasingly intelligent computing, which is obviously important to them, and many other portfolio bets, which is what Alphabet does. It allows the main company, Google, to focus on advertising, but Alphabet keeps on betting on different technology innovation so that in the future they provide more streams of growth to Google. So I've given you an overview of what Google is, right? One, it is essentially the search and advertising company that dominates online advertising today. That's one. Two, they have a few other businesses that essentially, gives them additional growth going forward if they take off. And ultimately, Google's primary strength comes from the fact that you and I are increasingly shopping online. We're increasingly expanding how we live our lives digitally. And when we do that, Google is unescapable. Primarily because there's so much to search on the internet, you need an index, you need a map to find it, and Google gives you that map. And it does it in a pretty interesting set of ways, right? It gives you a map through search, it gives you a map through maps, it also gives you a map of how you navigate who you're emailing and communicating with through chat and email, right? And of course, for those of you who are working, increasingly they have an office suite. They help you navigate work as well. So there's a theme there, and that's what drives Google's ongoing success and revenue. So let's come back to revenue. They're about $250 billion annual revenue. So they make every year about $250 billion, and that's expected to become $300 billion next year. Their approximate growth rate over the last few years has been between 20 and 30%. And we expect that rate of growth to continue. If you're wondering why the stock is valuable, being able to grow at 20-30%, which means that they will double every 5-ish years, is massive, right? That means that the likely benefits to shareholders as they continue to hold stock is likely to be very high. Now, there are no guarantees, like things could turn for the worst at any point of time for any company. But if I look at the fundamentals, which is, look, are we becoming more online? Are we becoming more digital? Yes. Is it becoming more difficult to find stuff on the internet? Yes. Do we use companies that make our lives easier? Yes. Is Google continuing to innovate? Yes. Do you recognize that brand and do you trust it? And Alphabet may be new to you, but Google is not in most likelihood. Yes. Those 5 yeses means that this stock is likely to be a mainstay of our global ecosystem. Forget investing, forget technology. It is a major player in our lives today. It's almost inescapable for you. And I believe that that means it will continue to drive value and be a pretty strong bet in any portfolio. Let's talk about, share, price, and value growth. Because of these strong fundamentals, Google has grown roughly 70%. Yeah, let me repeat. Google has grown roughly 70% this year. So if you had invested 10,000 rupees at the beginning of the year, just in Google, your portfolio in that single stock would be worth 17,000 today. In the last month, it's grown by 5%. And again, if you look at what the street is saying, 98% of analysts, what's an analyst? Someone who makes a living analyzing companies and predicting how they'll do. So 90% of Wall Street analysts are a buy, saying, buy this company now. Right? Now, you shouldn't just blindly trust analysts and say, oh, great, analysts are saying buy and I should. But if you look at the fundamentals, what I've just recounted, what their business is, the 5 yeses that make Google, I think, an amazing stock, and what's happened, I think there's plenty of upside. Now, if you're looking to get into the stock, get out, and trade on short time periods, I'm not sure that's the right strategy. You're going to have to almost say, do I believe in the long-term value of the stock? Yes, fantastic. Buy it and then hold it, right? And as you hold it, while there might be fluctuations on a daily, weekly basis, over the long term, it should give you returns that comfortably beat the index. Now, a couple of caveats. You need to be at a stage in life where you can afford to take some risk. If you're about to retire and you still want some return, I wouldn't recommend buying a single stock, no matter how impressive the return is, because something could go wrong. There are no guarantees, right? So investing in a stock, whether it's Google or anything else, has to be made with your risk appetite and risk profile and the stage of life you're in. On the other hand, if you're a fairly young investor or you're an investor with significant surplus funds, then make some of these bets. And I personally would make the Google bet. Hey folks, thanks for watching the Big Bucks Show. And tell us how you thought about this episode in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel, please, and hit the notification bell so you get a notification next time a video shows up. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We have a Twitter channel, a YouTube channel, and of course, also an audio podcast. And hey, continue watching us so that you can turn your small bucks into big bucks.